I hear a lot of people in my position, and I've been one of them myself, complaining about people are not competent, people are not skilled. And I've realized through a mentor of mine, the guy taught me that that's not the responsibility of the people, that's the responsibility of the systems. And another mentor of mine would iterate on even further. So the first one basically says, don't drive people, drive systems, and then let the systems drive the people. Another mentor iterated even further, and he calls it the 3 S's: systems, structures, and skills. And so if someone is messing up, our first question is, was it because they didn't have the right systems? Which is systems is the processes, structures is the tools, skills is the training, and then we added a 4th S in, which is the support. And so we always ask ourselves, if this person's messing up, is it because of the 4 S's missing? If all those are in place, then we say, okay, now let's look at the person. And sometimes it's a bit of a combination of them.
Welcome to Founder Real Talk, honest conversations about what it really takes to be a founder. Another episode of Founder Real Talk. Today there's Paul with me. Hello, a warm welcome from my side.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be joining you today.
Yes. I would love to give a short intro about you, and then, we keep on chatting. So who is Paul? I would say Paul is someone who really loves building, and not just companies, but also systems, ideas, and communities I could see. So Paul founded the Solid Projects, which is a digital strategy and execution agency. And you co-founded Thrive Marketing with an US partner. At the same time, you have been working with Peak Peptides, which is all about biohacking and longevity, which I found personally super interesting, especially how that can be beneficial for a founder as well, in order to hit peak performance. We can chat about that later. Besides that, you're also running a book called Anything But Not Everything. And that book is for founders doing too many things at the same time, which I can probably call myself as one of them. So also quite interesting in what you have to say there. Maybe I get a peek view of the book.
Absolutely.
And yes. And one of the core ideas you have here, at least that's what I could read about it, or what I got to know about, is that as soon as you get the product market fit right, then you have a lot fewer problems and probably one direction to focus on and to execute. So yeah, very interesting projects you're all running, Paul. So warm welcome again from my side. And I think the first question I have is because you're doing so many things, and often I'm quite similar in that sense, but then you hear all about that you have to focus as a founder, you have to focus. You can have one product, one market, one niche. And then, so how is it possible to coordinate all these different projects at the same time, and how to keep your energy management in order as well as your focus? Do you find it hard, or is it giving you energy to have different projects to kind of get your creative side online? Or what's your stake on the point of focus in particular?
Yeah. It's a good question, one that I don't have a very good answer to. It's a tough thing, I think. Focus is powerful. Energy is powerful, and sometimes they don't work well together. Sometimes if you focus too much on one thing, you lose energy. And sometimes if you do too many things that energize you, you lose too much focus. So it's a bit of a juggling act with finding that balance. And I think I'm definitely leaning more in these days of my life towards creating simplicity to find more focus, or finding things that have multiple upsides. So for example, Solid Projects and Thrive Marketing are very much a similar company, a similar product. And so what I've always wanted to do is to build stuff in a way that I can have multiple upsides, and to build it in a way that I can do that. It's very much Gary Keller, that one thing kind of thinking. So building things that you can leverage and step away from when there's some momentum and sustainability. And so trying to find those similarities where I can do a few different versions of something, where it's not like I'm starting a completely new company. And so for the other projects like Peak Peptides and the book project, they work together in synergy. So the whole thing with the book project is I'm going to be doing a video series, and the video series becomes the transcriptions of that becomes the rough draft of the book. And as I do those videos, I can also then see what people are giving feedback on, which can then refine the content of the book in real time before I even launch it. But part of the book's idea is to look at product market fit. And Peak Peptides is now a company where I think there's good product market fit, but I want to take some of these principles. I've applied it for many clients and I want to apply it for myself in a very environment that I have full control over. And so it's kind of the book and Peak Peptides is going to be one of the experiments that I'm running. And one of the parts of the book is going to be to run that experiment. So finding those synergies. There's many other things I want to do, but I'm refraining from doing. I know you had Francois on your podcast a while ago,
Yes.
and he's a big believer in focus, and he challenges me there and helped me there a lot. It's such an incredible aspect to find that focus, but at times there will be some things that come up that give me a lot of energy that I need to give attention to and make sure that I find that balance between the energy and the focus.
Yeah. So how do you then manage what should be prioritized? Is there like a certain system you build up to know, okay, today, Monday is project A, then Tuesday, or how do you structure yourself then with these different projects or
So
businesses?
I would love to do the what you said time blocking. That would be the
Mm.
smartest strategies to block out certain time for certain things.
Yes.
I like to do that, but if I'm by myself, my mind kind of wanders. So I kind of create these forcing functions. And I learned this from my friend and partner in Thrive Marketing, Dave, incredible guy. He's done work for recruiting for Jordan Peterson, the Petersons. He's done recruiting for Aramosi, for Chris Williamson, all these kinds of guys. So incredible like way and stories around how he gets access to those people. And a big part of how he can execute consistently, I've learned from him, is to create forcing functions. So I'll create meetings where I have to then go over this with an executive assistant, or I have to have a deadline I'm working towards. So I'd like to create forcing functions. It's probably not
Yeah.
the best strategy, and especially if badly executed, it can definitely focus too much on cortisol levels, which is not
Yeah.
healthy. So I think a lot of people would maybe kind of have a bit of a cortisol dependency, which I hopefully I've stayed away from. But creating forcing functions in a healthy way has been a good strategy for me.
Yeah. Is that like you basically set up like a weekly goal or like a monthly goal with like meetings, and so you know exactly, like you basically calculate backwards what you have to
Yeah.
have done by day X?
Yes, I'll create a deadline and then I know I need to work towards it. And that creates also a lot of energy. Us men are very testosterone driven, which creates those hormones create a lot of energy. And
Mm.
testosterone generally likes to release itself when there's a sense of urgency. Cortisol as well, like I said, but I do like to rely on that a bit, those natural rhythms. And then I also just have scenarios where I'll have someone that will go over certain aspects with me, and I can kind of take a step back and revisit and kind of look at, okay, what do I need to do next and have an interruption, like an
Yeah.
alarm clock, something like that. But sometimes I can ignore an alarm clock, I can mute it, where if a person comes in and says, okay, I'm going to interrupt you to take a step back because I like jumping into my work and finding focus. And so sometimes I don't want to pull myself out of that. So I want someone to come there and pull me out of that and kind of like recontextualize, is this the most important? Is this the most valuable thing I can be doing right now? And so those forcing functions work well most of the time.
Okay. And do you then have like because I find it fascinating how founders work, because everyone has like a different work style and a different system how to get going. Like do you have like some deep work where you basically shut yourself off, where like you cannot be reached, and you just like
Yeah.
have your or like a
Yeah.
creative time as well, especially to to write your book and to
Well,
get
I
in.
got the deep work book right here behind me from Cal Newport. So absolutely love his book, that whole idea of creating environments, obviously
Yes.
combining that a bit with, atomic habits, just creating environments that are conducive towards that. So deep work is critical. It's for my team as well.
Yeah.
We've kind of got scenarios and rhythms where we say, okay, this is deep work time, we protect it. And then we refrain from interrupting each other unless there's something exceptionally critical. And deep work is such a valuable thing. And obviously flow states, trying to get into a bit of a flow state. And I think that's what's nice is if there's a forcing function like a deadline, it creates
Yes.
a bit of pressure, which is also conducive towards a bit of a flow state. Where if I just do time blocking, I might find deep work, but I might not get into a flow state as easily.
Mm. And was it always like that? Like where like did you also learn like that as a teenager in high school, that you had to work more like under pressure and like last minute, or like how is there like a relationship how you work?
Yeah, maybe. I think my when I was a teenager, I was definitely far too distractible, easily distracted by everything. And basically, I kind of saw myself as an entrepreneur, and I thought entrepreneur. I wanted to be a serial entrepreneur at one stage, and I was. I had many different businesses, but and then I realized, no, I don't, because none of them are actually making money. So I've got many things that cost money, which is kind of like a hobby,
Yes.
but so I have reduced a lot of what I did, and I decided then what I'm going to do is to try build a framework that makes that more sustainable. And so we've done that. So I think my love language is I think it's the 5 love languages. The 6th one should be written about is systems and processes. Like I love structure, I love patterns, I love like even chaos theory, right? It's not predictable, but there's patterns that emerge. And I love that interplay around
Yes.
that. So, and I love how that, because if you look at leadership, a lot of leadership is based on Newtonian science, right? Which is very much cause and effect. But if you look at chaotic systems, it's not about that. It's about like the butterfly effects, those types of things. It's about patterns. There's actually some good work that's coming out the last few years around that. A friend of mine has studied around that quite extensively, and so I love learning about those types of things. And so I think finding rhythms and patterns in the chaos is important, but I haven't found that until the last few years. So that's definitely, it wasn't my past.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic though, so one thing that has benefited me is I struggled to learn through traditional methods, and I had to kind of learn to pay attention a lot in class to people. So because of that, I've was able to at least have a really good retention rate if I hear something. That's why I love audiobooks as well. And so I'll be in a conversation or a client meeting, and my retention around that is pretty good. So that disadvantage actually became quite a nice advantage. So that's the one thing from my past, maybe, but not so much structure. Structure came in the last few years.
But what did you learn about structure? What was not helping you in like in terms of like how you worked before you learned more about structures and systems? How did you operate?
So it was very much, so I can, I've always been able to execute at quite a fast pace. I've enjoyed that, being able to get things done way faster than anybody around me, and then keep on pushing that. That's always been kind of that game with yourself, right? That in again, of not challenging myself based on other people, but challenging myself. And so that allowed me to do a lot of different things. But what I realized is I'm never really going to build something of meaning if I'm doing it by myself. And so I need to adapt my work process to be able to work with the rest of my team, the rest of the world. And so it can't just work for me, it needs to work for the organization. And that had to then have me to shift away. So I used to read a book and I'd come to my business and I'm like, let's change our strategies and our systems and our processes completely based on this new exciting idea I learned. And that would happen every few months. And I
Uh-huh.
realized that a badly strategy consistently executed will often beat a good strategy that keeps on being reinvented every few weeks or few months. And
Yeah.
so that was a bit of a tough lesson to learn, but kind of not just, I begrudgingly embraced it at first, but since I've been doing that and seeing the results of that, I've actually started to enjoy the new approach.
Did you find a way how to, let's put it the other way around. What I always see with founders and their teams is that, like you might seem that you have alignment, but then in the end, you talk about the same thing, but it means something totally different. I mean, often there's like the discrepancy between tech and non-tech. Obviously, that's the most spoken about. But even if you, say something about, okay, you're committed in a certain way, and for some person it means, yes, I'm going to do it. But, like
Yeah.
easygoing, for someone else, it means,
Yeah.
okay, I'm on it like 100%. I'm not going to stop working on it today until it's finished.
Yeah.
Have you found like a way how to make sure that there is proper alignment? That, not just from the language, yes, we commit, but also from a level of understanding?
So yeah, I'm laughing because just before this chat, we had a chat with one of our new team, and there's something I mentioned to her on Friday, which was completely differently taken up. And what was awesome is she had the courage to come and ask a clarifying question and to say, "You mentioned this was my understanding, and this was my concern." And then we had the opportunity to correct that, right? So
Yes.
I can't always, I can control what I say, but I can't control what someone hears. is, I think, the mindset of many people, but it's incorrect. We can control what people hear through simple methods like saying, what is your understanding of what I said? Repeat it back to me. So we've got these things, we call them, we had like a list of questions at one stage, but every time you receive a brief, you need to follow the following process. And you say, okay, what needs to be done? Or when does it need to be done by? What's a priority? Do you want to preview? How long should I spend on this? We had like a whole list of questions. I think we simplified it down to 4 questions now. I remember the original method. I can't remember the new one. But the idea is you ask these clarifying questions. And then once they're done with that, you say, okay, repeat your understanding of what you've understood back to me. That's a very valuable tool. And then, yeah, I
They do
think
that,
that,
they do it in
that,
restaurants in sorry, they do it in restaurants in
yeah,
Asia as well to confirm.
okay. Okay, that's
So
interesting.
it's
Makes sense.
perfect.
Like a good way to repeat the order back to make sure I understood it. And yeah, that doesn't happen often enough. That's been a very powerful thing, and we see when people don't use it, that's
Mm,
always there. Another thing is we make sure that we have recordings, because people forget, right? If let's say the project is due in 2 weeks' time, they're not going to actually start with it right away, and then they
yeah.
forget, so they can go rewatch the recording. And so one of our things is once you're done, go and rewatch the recording. Make sure you don't miss anything, especially initially. We've got mechanisms in our projects to check like this is what successful work looks like, to follow through that. And so, yeah, we've got quite a few mechanisms. That for me is an important thing is I hear a lot of people in my position, and I've been one of them myself, complaining about people are not competent, people are not skilled. And I've realized, through a mentor of mine, the guy taught me that that's not the responsibility of the people. That's the responsibility of the systems. And another mentor of mine, like, iterated on even further. So the first one basically says, don't drive people, drive systems, and then let the systems drive the people. Another
Mm,
mentor iterated even further, and he calls it the 3 S's: systems, structures, and skills. And so if someone is messing up, our first question is, was it because they didn't have the right systems? Which is
mm,
like, basically, did they have the right tools, all the things that they needed? Did they have the right, that's systems is the processes, structures is the tools, skills is the training. And then we added a 4th S in, which is the support. And so we always ask ourselves, if this person's messing up, is it because of the 4 S's missing? If all those are in place, then we say, okay, now let's look at the person. And sometimes it's a bit of a combination of them. But all of the stuff I've said now is speaking to making sure there's alignment around production and work and goals. That's not enough, right? Because it's not Newtonian science, it's not cause and effect. People are a lot more complex than that, right? If you look at traditional project management at the first level, it's your 4 M's: manpower, material, machinery, and money. The problem
mm,
is money is pretty predictable unless you've got like a very fluctuating currency, but for the most part, money is there. If you have material, let's say to clean a floor, you know that this chemical can clean so many square meters. If you have a machine, you know it can clean at the following rate. It's very predictable. People,
yes.
not, right? One day they'll make you amazed, and the next day they'll make you horrified. And so then you need to take a lot of other things, and you need to consider, what is their state? What is their energy levels? What is their engagement look like? So you need to pay attention to those things. And then you need to facilitate conversations like what we had earlier with this new, exceptionally potential, high potential, very valuable person, a lot of potential there. But if she has all this potential, but she's worried about something, and she doesn't have that conversation, that's going to have a huge impact on her productivity. And it's going to have an effect on her enjoyment and engagement at work. So hopefully we had a good chat with her. Hopefully that's addressed, but it's kind of, you want to invite those conversations. And then more importantly, people are pretty scared to have those conversations. So when you have that, you need to facilitate it, in a very productive way, in a way that kind of keeps them calm and peaceful. What are your thoughts on that? It's something I still need to learn a lot about. I'd love to hear what you think about how to find better alignment.
Yeah, no, it was actually interesting because I went to a conference just last week where there was one presentation about, like, often what's missing in a startup, that is basically the North Star, so that the staff doesn't even know, or like the employees don't even know, like, what they're building. And like, not in a sense like, oh, like, we are BMW, we're building cars. No, you're not selling the car, you're selling a feeling of freedom. Like, what are you actually selling? And to really be in resonance of what are
Mm,
you actually selling. Like, Airbnb is not selling like a place to stay, but it's like a
yeah,
flexibility in traveling. And like, it's always something, like,
mm,
it's an emotion you sell, right? So, and often there's some
absolutely.
misalignment. They were also talking a lot about values, which, like probably like 6 years ago, I was running a lot of workshops on values and the why question and everything. And I was like, I'm not sure if that's all like, because we were a consultant, so I was like, well, me getting paid for it. So maybe it's just like a political thing to do, but culture is everything. Like if there is no alignment and no like proper support that people can actually openly ask or comment or be their most authentic self to actually be able to execute on their
I
highest
like that.
level and performance.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a barrier, I would say, between okay, it's not a friend, it is a colleague. Like even though you kind of have like a, especially as in a startup, like it feels like all like a big family, but at the same time, like
Yeah.
you're there to have like the business growing, and in the end, you want to make money in the end, right? Like this is the definition of a business charity.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're like all happy friends, like you like that productivity or execution in the end is like the core, but in the end, all business are people. So in the end, it's all about people, psychology, human behavior to how do you empower people in your team and to make them understand and to give them responsibility as well or authority in their own domain.
Yeah, that's fairly always, yeah. I think that's it. And that's kind of what I said to in this conversation earlier was I answered a question, but I said what's important for us is also not just are we growing and that there's opportunity. Specifically, Robert Greene talks about in his book Mastery, like people, high value people seek out three things: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Right. So we need to do meaningful work, and not
Yes.
not always exciting work. Sometimes it's very mundane, it's very repetitive, but it's still meaningful. We have the ability to get to master our skills and to grow, which I think is very valuable, and that we have some level of autonomy where we have can. And I think that's one of our most valuable things I've done for our onboarding is to
Yeah.
say there's a video that says acceptable risks and unacceptable risks. So we want people to be autonomous, we want them to innovate, but then they do it in an area which is a high risk area, and then we slap them on the risk, and then that person stops innovating, stops taking risks, they stop taking any kind of responsibility because they're like, I don't want to have that bad experience again. So if we define these are areas we want you to have this ability to have autonomy and to have innovation, take risks here, but don't take risks with these kinds of areas. That's been a really, really helpful thing to in our business.
Yeah. Yeah, can you tell me a bit more about how you do your or how you execute your onboarding process? Like when you onboard some people, like I remember that you had quite a like a specific one or like that's like quite important for you.
So yeah, we and it's a thing that every time we try to make an iterative improvement, it's not at all where I'd like to be, but every time it gets a little bit better. We've got like a little bit of a welcome pack where it's got just some random quirky stuff. It's very dorky, but it's got a little bit of a story behind it. And we try to make someone's first day quite special. Times people like we haven't received necessarily much feedback, but every now and then we also have someone say like, this is the best first day they've ever had.
Okay.
So I don't know. Hopefully other people have really enjoyed it. They're just not speaking up. But so we try to make it something that's quite special. And then what we do is we've got like a library of videos where that kind of takes them through who we are as a company. So not just what we do and how we do it, but why. So very much someone saying we start with why. Use a lot of stories to hopefully make it a lot more sticky and a lot more memorable. And so we go through that. We go through, there's some things like even like our code of conduct. There's aspects to a code of conduct, which is very much in a document format. But then we want to kind of also make sure it's not just the letter, but the spirit. And so we kind of highlight some of the aspects around that. And so there's a series of videos which can be a bit mind numbing. So we try to encourage people to take the time, don't rush through it because it's a lot of information. So we do need to improve kind of how we mix it with other things a little bit more, because I think at this stage it's a little bit too much information without enough kind of disruptions and distractions. What I'd like to do is hopefully hire people together so that they can almost do like a cohort. They can discuss this stuff together. I think a lot of learning and retention happens there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got a whole series of videos. They don't have to wait for my availability to onboard them or someone else's availability. And if that person's not feeling it that day, they're going to get the very downgraded version of that onboarding. So videos have served us exceptionally well. And then we have like little quizzes and stuff, but I think we can take that to the next level. I'd like to kind of take it to, I've started building a product, but this is one of the projects I've sidelined where we bring in like personality profiling program we want to launch called the valuables, where we turn our values into like a reward system. So we don't want to just reward people for accomplishing goals, but also doing it in a way that aligns with our values. And
Mm.
then we want to capture those stories. So when we say this is our values, we can then tell those stories. This is how this person exemplified this value. We can give a few examples of that.
Yes.
And so that's something we want to do where they can, like even Uber Eats vouchers or Take a Lot vouchers, they can redeem it. And it could be anybody in the organization that can give away a voucher up to a certain level. If you want to give more, you need kind of some approval for that. But we might just give someone like a monthly budget and they can decide who they want to give out those things to and just acknowledge someone. Like personality profiling, I know Ray Dalio talks about that a lot with Bridgewater. They've got those little cards by each person's door that says, this is how I like being rewarded. This is my
Mm.
preferred work. I think it's like 7 or so questions based on a personality profile to understand it, like how can you get the best work out of someone. What I
Yeah.
have seen, a bit of a caveat when it comes to personality profiles, is if someone is in, let's say they just went through a horrible experience and then they arrive and do a personality profile, they're going to test a lot differently
Mm.
versus if they are challenged to innovate and to become the best version of themselves. So we try to, when we do the personality profiles, I see that we want to kind of prime people to envision whom I'm aspiring to be and what does that person look like. And then their personalities test slightly differently is quite interesting versus, I know some personality profiles that go a little bit deeper might get around that issue. But if you do something like the Myers-Briggs, which is quite fun, also quite quick, someone's state at the time of taking that personality test is going to have quite a large impact.
It does, yeah. I did mine like 10 times.
Yeah, changes
Yeah,
every time,
and it changed. Yeah,
depending
it
on which
changed.
business. Yeah,
It did. And then I did other tests trying to figure out who am I and how do I
yeah,
work and what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, etc. But it's quite good to know that, and then yeah, also how to incentivize others, how they function and what they need. I mean, it's the same thing with, I would say, even when you figure out like what's your chronotype, like the sleep chronotype, so that you know, okay, this person is like, you know, super productive in the morning, the other one is more productive in late afternoon. So when are you going to have the meetings? Or in terms of,
good
is the
point.
meeting, is it going to be an important meeting, or is it more like, you know, an update where you don't have to be creative? So for example, for
Mm,
me, like I block my entire
nice, like
mornings.
that.
I don't have calls in the mornings because that's my productive
Mm,
time. And then
okay,
calls I can have, but I'm not using I don't do deep work. So after
mm,
12, like my brain is already like shutting down in a way, like the creative part.
yeah,
So for others, it works differently.
okay.
So by knowing that, actually, it makes quite a big difference.
We haven't considered that at all. I must definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's just energy
Mm,
management, basically, in terms of like, you know,
yeah,
your chronotype is,
that's powerful.
it's genetic, but it can change over time. But yeah, I mean, I looked into that because I was quite interested in studies about school schedules, you know, because a lot of kids, they are not morning people, and then they're forced to sit and concentrate, and then they're getting diagnosed
Yeah,
with ADHD. But in the end, it's all against their own biology. So, you know, obviously they struggle, but
yeah,
yeah, so I found it
yeah.
super fascinating to figure out like
I'm gonna
what's
definitely
your
look into
best
that.
sleep cycle and when are you actually productive, or when you should actually
Yeah,
have your deep work blocks.
I like that. Well, I mean, I'm going through that with my kids now, trying to find ways to help them to be engaged. Like they've inherited a bunch of things from me, genetics wise.
Yeah.
So like ADHD, dyslexia, all the works and stuff. So helping them work through that and also seeing the advantages, because I don't think anything's purely negative, right? So one thing might affect
No,
you badly in one way, but in another context, it could be quite an asset. And so just shifting those belief systems around, like this is not a bad thing. This is a challenging thing, but sometimes those challenges are exactly what you need to succeed.
exactly, yeah. When was one of your biggest challenge in like, in terms of like your founder career, founder journey, where you would say like a significant part of you had to die or died there? Was there like a specific, maybe more than one specific moment where you thought, okay, this is not gonna work out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a
I
proper
think
job.
the temptation has been there quite often. I think I think with me, there's been quite a few moments. I think one of the toughest ones is when you invest a lot in a person and they leave, which is always been tough. You especially when I wanted to, I decided, okay, I'm going to shift my focus from doing 20 things to 2 things and majority in this one thing. And I'm going to kind of build people as a big part of that. And then often what I would do is I'd also build not just that person. I'd love seeing them develop and grow, but I'd also build a role around a person. And when that person leaves, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to find their replacement. So
Yeah.
only recently we've like decided, I would say in the last 3 or 4 years, decided to say, we're not going to build roles around people. We're going to kind of, people can have a few roles, but they need to kind of work in a certain way, So to some degree, we've had that. I think designers are, they would come into the company, they're used to, saving files all over the place, some on the desktop, some on their Google Drive, some over here, some over there, different versions, final design, approved, you don't know. And
Yeah.
so just kind of standardized on a lot of things. And the other day, I actually saw that you got like those ISO standards, and us, what we eventually developed by self is actually quite close to like an ISO standards, where there's consistency. So if someone is sick or if something happens to someone, including myself, you don't have that dependency on like knowing where their work is. So it's alleviating those key man dependencies. But I think just also making peace with the fact that people leave, people move on, and just a bit of that inner work. So it wasn't necessarily changing how I did things or what I did, but just changing my own perceptions. I can't always control what happens to me, but I definitely have the power to control how I interpret that.
No, I mean, it feels like for me, it felt like a breakup every time when like someone, like a business partner kind of, there was like someone misalignment or like the path drifted off, which is interesting how the body then reacts and the nervous system and,
Mm,
like everything is kind of
yeah,
like basically triggering the uncertainty. That's all what the nervous system is realizing, like, oh, something is
yeah,
missing now. How do I now face the uncertainty because there is a big question mark? So,
yeah,
and then often the mind goes into like worst case scenarios, but that's not even going to be the case. And it's just like walking like the next steps every day, one more. But
yeah,
still, like it's not the easiest I can imagine.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
I've made a bunch of mistakes, done a lot of stupid things in my business, in my personal life, and just kind of understanding that, we're not defined by those moments. We can grow from that. And like, I can see that with these other people as well, right? So there's eventually got to a point where if someone key were to leave, like I really am excited for what their future might hold. Hopefully they can go out there, and it's rewarding sometimes. Like there was a guy that was a huge part of the business. He got a job offer, which was like 3 times what we were paying him at the stage. Very small, in a very small town as well. And I was
yeah,
just, I'm like, we can't match this. This is incredible. Let me actually help you coach how to interview with these people, how to, what from their perspective, what they're going to be looking for when they interview you. And he moved on there. He worked for them for a while. I think he's now done, he's doing his own thing. And it's rewarding to see how well he's doing and how some of the things that he learned with us, he's implementing there. He actually implemented some stuff in our business, like blocking was one of the things, time blocking was one of the things he brought because he was struggling with his own time management and energy management. And he started using blocking. It was huge impact for him. And he actually brought it into the company. And that's the default thing for the company, not for me, but for the
yeah,
rest of the company is to do blocking. Has worked exceptionally well. So he made a huge impact in the organization. I think then, we made an impact in his life, and it's rewarding to see how that, I think he's actually in his new company, he's the head of ops. And that was like his biggest weakness when he first joined was horrible time management, operational stuff. And it actually became such a powerful thing that that's
yeah.
part of his role now, which is kind of awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah. Probably because like he was struggling so much that at some point like you just had
Yeah.
to master that skill eventually. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you say about like what I see a lot of founders often struggling with, and even myself, is that often when you build a business, like you kind of identify with the business, or it's like your baby, like you grow it and you're like the guardian basically. But at the same time, you also know this is not you. Like your worth is not the business.
Mm.
But then something is not working out, something is failing, or some people are leaving, whatsoever. It's difficult to detach from it because obviously you put in so much faith into the thing, and then all of a sudden something is not working out anymore. So like your
Yeah.
potential trajectory kind of like just like turn into an illusion,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
it hits your well the ego. I guess it's panicking because it feels like, oh, I'm threatened now, like my worth is threatened. is there a way how you, like, every time when you face some failures, and I guess there was kind of a lot of, like, hiccups in certain ways. I mean, all the founders have that, but in a way, how you ground yourself again? Like, is there a certain way
Mm,
how you like have a line between, okay, this is just business, and like your worth that's actually
yeah.
anchored in you and not in what you do?
So I think so that's something I've never really I think had too much of an issue with because I felt like I was very ingrained in the production day to day. And so if
Yeah.
we grew our products, if we grew our offerings, if I was often learning through that. So if something were to happen to the business, I feel like I still have that knowledge, those insights, and I can probably easily find a job that probably paid me more at that stage, maybe even now, than what I was
Yeah.
making, So for less time and effort, I think there's another state that scares me, and that's also part of the reason for the book. And I've seen this time and time again. Is it's kind of like you're you're investing time, right? So I can leave with that knowledge,
Mm,
and time has never really scared me too much, but it is a factor, right? You can go and you can take that, you can find a job, but you've got to rebuild to some degree. And
yes.
people give years of their life into businesses, and sometimes the worst failure is a failure that doesn't look like failure. It looks like success, but success that takes more work and more effort every single year to maintain or to just get similar results. And it could be
Mm,
because it's, like a bad industry, the industry's dying. It could be because you don't know how to get access to certain markets. And most of the time, it's just some version of product market fit, right? And you have this scenario where you are succeeding, you kind of bringing money in you, but it's taking more brute force every year or every month to get there. And because it's such an incremental change, people don't realize it, but they find themselves years later
yeah.
completely with like adrenal fatigue or even adrenal burnout. And then they have to go back and they have to change how they do things, and often they talk about like looking after themselves, looking after their wealth and their health, not just their wealth, but their wellness and their health. And that's been a big thing for me also to look at just doing that. It wasn't a priority for me as much, and just looking at doing those things had made a huge difference. But I think yeah, that's sometimes the saddest is to I've chatted to a lot of people that they kind of demoralized because it's just so tough, and it just seems like getting a job will be so much easier. And in many ways, they're right, but they've invested so much effort into this thing, and
Yeah.
it feels like just a little bit more might get them there, and often it won't. And it's so sad that that little bit of extra effort will just compound the problem even further
Yeah.
and not really do that. And so you sometimes need to find a way to reinvent yourself and kind of find like a new avenue or like a new thing. And it's like, and you see some of those stories, and they're like these incredible stories. I heard one recently about Slack, where these
Yeah.
guys had developed this game. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have, yeah.
It
It's
was actually just
incredible.
like an internal tool they developed that eventually became like this phenomenal product. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes people have that. They've got these certain like insights and skills and stuff like that, and they just don't understand how to combine what they have with the market. It's very much a product market fit triangle, right? So you're finding an existing market that has an underserved need. Then you need to get your value proposition, your feature set, and your user experience. And there needs to be alignment. If there's not alignment between your user experience
Yeah.
and your feature set and your value proposition with the pain points that underserved need of the market, it's so very difficult to do anything. If you can get that right, a lot of other things become so much easier because then people like just something like the customer experience, then it's not like a grudge purchase. People actually like you solving a problem that's a pressing pain point. So I'm actually excited to work with you. Customer experience becomes so much easier. Your feature set is so much more valuable. Your value proposition, if you understand that, you can craft your value proposition to speak very directly to those needs. A lot of people make a big problem there. Their value propositions are too muddy and they're offering too much to too many people, and it means nothing to everybody, you know? So
Yeah.
I think that's very sad for me, and that's very challenging when I see that happening. But for me personally, I don't know. I think it was more investing in people. Like that's been the toughest part for me. I think there has been times where I rather just want to get a job, you know, kind of give up the stream of what I'm building. So there's been many of those moments. Fortunately, not so many recently, but there's definitely times like that. I think also sometimes wondering, am I working on the right thing? That same effort applied to something else. Like, would it not be easier? So there's those challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously comparison, which makes it like, like seeing other people. And I mean, that's why one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because, like you often compare yourself with just like highlight stories, but you have literally no idea what's
Yeah.
actually going on there. And so many founders are wearing a mask. Obviously, you have to be sort of an imposter because you're literally selling something that doesn't exist yet, especially when you have
Yeah.
your minimal viable product and, like you fake it until you make it. That's all a big mentality and you have to. But
Yeah.
also when you go to a lot of events, like it's not authentic. It's like often just like
Mm.
doesn't really encourage people to listen to the story, like how
Yeah.
everything is like going so well. And like it can't be.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, you do need those groups and those communities where you can, you have to have it where you can be vulnerable. Like, that made a big difference because I would often hide those things because you can't really, I mean, you can't talk to a team about that. Like, you're going to scare them. They're going to want to quit and find something else, And so you can't really talk to them about, or you shouldn't talk to them about that. You can't really talk to people that have got jobs because they don't understand you. They think you're crazy, and they're right. You are crazy. There is something wrong with you, but
Yeah.
it's maybe a good kind of wrong with you. There's productive
Yeah.
pursuit, and so yeah, you do need to find those communities. That's important. It's very,
Do you
very
have
important.
mentors or people you look up to who you kind of feel inspired by?
Yeah, I've had mentors. I haven't really got a specific mentor now. I love learning, enjoy going through a bunch of audiobooks. So, you always kind of like Napoleon Hill would say
Mm,
that he created this mastermind of these fictional people and he would kind of like visualize how they would respond. So I like creating mental models that kind of
yeah.
serve me well in different situations. I can kind of put on that mental model, that persona. And I see business as a game. So it's almost like, I can play different positions and but I don't want to play it as myself because I'm not necessarily good at that, but I can become, like an Alex Hormozy, but I definitely don't want to be Alex Hormozy in all areas of life because I think that would not be great. It's like same as Steve Jobs. You probably don't want to take parenting advice from Steve Jobs, but there's still a lot you can learn from that guy. So
Yeah.
that's been really good. I think good friends are good. I think a mentor can give you really good, like high level advice. And I definitely like to find someone that's potentially accomplished what I accomplished and the way I accomplish it. And kind of, I think like there's a lot I've learned when I have had mentors. It's been phenomenal, but I've struggled to find like a pure mentor recently. Mostly it's just like a lot of really incredible people around me. Talking about Francois, incredible guy. There's a friend of mine that I go gym with, such an incredible guy, Tashis. He's just phenomenal. There's like a lot of really incredible people around me that just challenge me and push me. There's another Paul, sometimes good people as well. So there's incredible people that around you that just challenge and push you.
Yeah.
I think finding those communities of people that can do that are good. Mentor is good, but if I had to choose, I would rather choose good communities over a mentor.
Did you lose certain friends as soon as you started your entrepreneurial journey, or I don't know, had to cut some lifestyle in a way, or change your way how you live? Like, was there a big change for you, or not
Yeah, I
really?
think so. I had quite I think in storytelling you'll call it an inciting incident where I went through divorce a few years ago and basically decided to relocate to a completely new town. Didn't really know anybody, and when I got this site about a little bit more than a year ago, the kind of friends I sought out were a lot different to the traditional friends.
Mm,
And it's just, I'm very rewarding, so different people that challenge you, that understand you. Uh, and not always just, in person. I think a good community I formed part of while I was, because you can't always have the luxury of having that. I was in a small town. There was a few like entrepreneurial people that were true entrepreneurs, and building businesses that can scale with great ambition, great philosophies, but that was quite rare. And so I joined an online community through a guy called Tumble Yo. He had Impact University, and I
mhm,
joined that community. And there was this like elite mastermind group that you had to meet some certain criteria to join, and they had an opening. And I didn't meet the criteria, but I applied anyway. And I got like a nice video set up and I explained who I am, what I did. And I ended up joining that. And I met Dave there. I met another guy called Raj. He had just recently, I think, sold his company like for $48 million, which was like still to me now is a bit of a crazy amount. But especially back then, I was just like, I'd love to just chat to someone like this and eventually became friends with Raj. friends with Dave, and I've got some like a whole bunch of friends out of that group, and just chat to them from time to time. Yeah, there's guys, another guy in Ireland. There's quite a few guys in the States. I think, yeah, I never really thought you could form a connection with like someone like that online, and we met in person, but with some of them, with Dave and Ian recently. I'd love to still
Mm.
meet Raj in person, but it still was quite a community, a lot of vulnerability, a lot of real talk at times. It was, yeah, you can find those communities. You just got to push for it because it's tricky. Not all of the communities in that Impact Area University were like that. Some of them were very surface level.
Yeah.
So find that community you can really, really connect with and be vulnerable with.
No, that's beautiful and very needed because you learn so much about you and that is also like my last question I would have. What is one truth you only got to know while being inside, like the startup or entrepreneurial journey, which you didn't know before? Like, was there something like you felt like eye opening, or like, oh, no one warned me about this, or no one told me about this, that you could only experience it because you're in it now?
Hmm. I think is that people don't understand until they've gone through something, right?
Yes.
People might have an intellectual understanding. I know I think the best way I've heard this phrase is by the author from The Psychology of Money. He basically said someone can understand something in their mind, but until they understand it, like they've gone through an experience, you maybe even understand something on like a nervous system level, you're
Mm.
not going to have the same kind of knowledge. If someone has a head knowledge, they're not actually going to be triggered to apply that knowledge with a sense of urgency, where if you've gone through an extensive experience, your nervous system will trigger you to say, this is now the right time to apply this knowledge. And just to understand that people don't understand, like employees don't understand. They haven't gone through what you've gone through. You can't get frustrated with them. They don't understand. They're not malicious. They're not selfish. They're not entitled. Well, some of them maybe are, but for the most part, they just people just they need to kind of be patient with them. You need to go through. They don't understand. I'm not saying all people are worth that effort, and I'm not saying that effort should be the same for everyone. It should be probably like a game of tennis. That's the one thing I've learned more recently is I can't do too much for someone. It's more like I play the ball, and when they play it back, then it's my next shot. I don't play 50 shots. It creates an enormous amount of pressure on that person if I invest too much into them. So
Yeah.
I think that people just understand that people don't understand, and that's okay. Like you can't judge them for that.
Yes. Yeah. That's what also Kevin Trudeau says. Like people know about something, but they don't know. It's like there's a big difference to know about something and to actually know because you have experienced it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
someone was saying the other day is like, if you've never ridden a bicycle, you can read every book there is about reading a bicycle. It's not going to really help you that much until you start to actually learn to ride a bicycle. You know?
True. True. It's quite a different experience. Yeah. Okay. Wow. No. And I also like the analogy of the tennis match because yeah, maybe at some point, yeah, like you don't want to waste your energy. Like it has to be kind of like a proper game. And yeah, that's actually quite
Yeah.
a nice analogy. Yeah. No, thank you so much,
Or
Paul. Is
maybe
there
paddle.
anything
Maybe a paddle
community
game is better in today's terms. Yeah,
paddle?
paddle's a bit more.
Yes, paddle now. It's easier for everyone.
It is more like a
Apparently,
paddle
everyone
game.
can play
Very
it.
fast paced.
Yes,
I'm
and in a
sure, like
team.
as
So
in
a team of
paddle, you're
two.
gonna pull a hamstring, you're gonna run into the wall, you're gonna hit yourself or something. So probably paddle, probably more like paddle than tennis. That makes more sense.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you crash the wall. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, perfect. Is there anything the community can do for you and your businesses? Is there anything that could be of support or beneficial?
that's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate that question. So I'm going to be launching the Anything But Not Everything series, and I just love people to give their feedback and to see what's valuable to them, what additional
Yes.
questions they have. I want this project to be something that serves people, so to get feedback to understand what is actually of value. I'd love them to just follow that journey. And my Instagram will probably be the best handle to look at. So I'm sure you'll put that up with a link for
Hmm.
people to look at. My LinkedIn is busy being updated, but Instagram is definitely my primary channel.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah, and I can also actually post it in the Founder Real Talk WhatsApp community. There's like over 330 people in there, so probably
Did incredible.
that would be
Thank you.
great. Okay. No, cool. Thank you so much. It was really cool and very interesting to yeah learn about you and your experiences. Valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. I I really enjoy this and I appreciate your time and just building this great platform. I think it's very valuable. In closing, maybe just to say like it's yeah, that inner game, just understanding the challenges, like all your mentors, and that's maybe why I say communities over mentors, because all your mentors have a very polished exterior and they can kind of show you the way, but they don't necessarily show you the way of getting over all those emotions, all those struggles. And so
Yeah.
I love what you're doing here, and well done. It's such a powerful message you're sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's actually also fun, but because it actually brings more fun and authenticity back into the space of building. And, like so many founders go through very similar challenges, and it seems more manageable if you can like also see other people like that they have, found a way how to
Yeah.
go through it, or just to make it more relatable and inspirational as well. And
Yeah.
to also make it more to talk more about it, because it's the external game, but the internal game is also quite a
Yeah.
not even like probably even more than 50% who actually makes it, because we all know when we're stuck in our mind with our thoughts, like nothing is happening. If we cannot sleep properly, nothing is happening. So
Yeah.
there's quite
Absolutely.
some inner game happening here. Yeah, a
Love
lot of
it.
things in the founder journey is actually psychology. I mean, it starts with like finding the right team. It's like all
Mm,
business are humans, or people. So it's a lot about human behavior.
absolutely.
And we're all kind of dysfunctional in a way that we also don't really
That's
understand like
true.
how we operate. So
Yeah.
there will be kind of some challenges happening anyways, until we have awareness and consciousness, so that or that we are conscious and we can actually make a proper change. I don't even know. Yeah. No, thank you, Paul. It was really great having you here. Thanks for listening. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.